Hi, Richard.
Hi, friend. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. And
Great.
today we are recording Technical Tuesdays, which is more of the technical environment and how it works in the back end, if you may. And today's
hmm
topic is native integration between GRC and operations. And I think a key word today is native integration because in today's session is about the difference between native integration and non-native integration, specifically in the context of governance, risk and compliance, or also known as GRC, and the operational systems. So
hmm
the aim is to explore why some integrations are acceptable, like the ones like accounting, but why others, particularly with GRC and operations, must be native to avoid silos, cost, and risks. So I think that
Yeah.
actually the first question would be, what's the challenge most companies face with a GRC or governance risk and compliance?
Well, the major challenge most companies face is that their governance, risk, and compliance environments or silos are treated as an add-on.
Mm,
Governance frameworks, whether they're ISO, ESG, EPR,
right,
or some kind of internal or alternate framework, are tracked in separate tools and spreadsheets, disconnected from daily operations, and that's going to present with a number of problems.
right. And so what's the, but it's so embedded in today's operation. What is wrong with that approach? So what people will see that this is wrong,
Well, it's very common, but it creates what I call bad silos,
right?
right? So, for example, risks would be tracked, but they're not linked to the assets that they impact.
All right.
Policies exist, but they don't cascade into tasks.
Hmm.
Compliance data is gathered manually instead of being sourced directly from operational workflows. That's just a few examples. And
Yeah,
there's literally dozens of examples of disconnects that can be caused by bad silos.
right. So so what do you mean with then when native integration? Because actually we have various ways to integrate these, right? But
hmm
native
Yeah.
integration in particular,
Yeah. Integration, let's just say, would be two areas of concern that speak to one another.
right?
Okay. Native integration in our context means
Yeah,
that governance, risk, and compliance is embedded into the operational architecture itself, where risks, controls, policies, frameworks, strategies, metrics
yeah,
is fully integrated with incidents and orders and resources. They all
right,
share the same master data, the same metadata, and the same audit trail.
right.
Nothing is bolted on. They're all just, they feed off of one another full time, all the time, real time.
Yeah. So that
That's a native integration. Yeah.
right. So that is in other words, is the same code on the same platform, or they share the same code on the same platform rather than Zapier or APIs that actually are going or
Yeah.
middlewares that actually goes from one side to a place or repository and then catch from the other place 24 hours later. So that's not a native integration, is it?
No, that's not native.
Right.
That's a non-native integration, right?
Mm,
Another example, integrating operations into an accounting system, which I
yeah.
consider is an appropriate
Right.
non-native integration. And in
Right.
fact, that's required with Trinity. Most
Right.
SMEs and mid-market firms already run established accounting or finance systems. So
Yeah.
forcing them to replace those would be both disruptive and unnecessary.
Right.
Instead, accounting, I believe, as a function is best ring fenced as its own domain. You
Right.
pass the necessary and predictable and fairly simple in comparison operational transactions in, but you don't burden the finance system with operational governance or risk logic.
Right. Right. So what that is looking practice, like is how a company can recognize it's native or non-native. Or
Well, it really depends on whether they're from the same platform. And I consider it acceptable for accounting versus GRC because accounting is a separate domain. It has its own rules and
right.
boundaries. a ledger of record, basically, and ring fencing it makes sense.
Yeah.
GRC is not a separate domain. It governs how operations themselves are executed or should be executed. If
Right.
GRC is not natively integrated into operations, you lose the traceability between leadership and frameworks and strategies and risks and day-to-day
Yeah.
activities. That's where
Right.
non-native integration is dangerous
Yeah.
and can end up being very, very expensive.
Right. And for small or mid-market companies, that an overkill, all these native integrations?
Well, first, let's mention what it looks like in practice, right?
Right.
So, for instance, if GRC is natively integrated with operations, when a fault or an incident occurs,
Yeah.
related risks would be updated automatically, right?
Right.
When a resource is consumed, compliance metrics are logged instantly. And when a policy changes, linked controls and tasks refresh in real time.
Right.
Framework reporting becomes an outcome of operational execution, not a separate project. Now,
Right.
whether that's overkill for smaller firms, actually, it's the reverse. It's the
Right.
total opposite, right? SMEs and mid-market enterprises suffer most from siloed apps because they lack large compliance teams, right? And
Mhm.
native integration gives them enterprise-grade governance without enterprise overheads.
Right. Right. So um, it seems a simple topic, but actually it's quite complex. But actually, in terms of what would be the takeaway for technical leaders today, what would be that takeaway today?
I would say that not all integrations are equal,
Right.
right? Some, I believe, are acceptable, especially when they're pattern based, when they're predictable, when they follow rigid rules, etc. But operations and accounting works because the accounting domain is ring fenced, right?
Right.
Um, GRC versus operations, I believe, must be native because governance lives inside operations, not
Right.
outside them. If you look at it another way, accounting is more or less a byproduct of operational execution,
Right.
right? Transactions get created.
Yeah.
Now, most companies will have an accounting system that they're already using to report to the government for taxation,
Right.
right? And to reconcile bank and to just measure the dollar by dollar performance, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Disrupting that shouldn't be necessary if a company wants to get into the space of managing the rest of their operations with a solid system.
Right.
It generates journal entries so that they can be ported into the accounting system.
Yeah.
We don't address that domain directly
Right.
because we don't want companies, the first thing that they have to do is is to replace the one system that's probably working for them,
Right.
right? Whereas if they're going to, on a pathway to upgrading their environments, immediately making a linkage between governance, risk, and compliance, and
Yeah.
especially risk management metrics and and strategies and operational execution. I
Yeah.
think that that's critical to get right early,
Right.
as early as is physically possible. And considering our price point and the fact that we're targeting SMEs and mid-market enterprises, we're an ideal system for that.
Right.
And I'm not aware of any other system available to the mid-market that has fully integrated real-time governance, risk, and compliance feedback built into the platform.
Wow. Right. Right.
So instead of somebody treating governance framework reporting,
Yeah.
as an example, as a sunk cost reporting project
Yeah.
requiring consultants to come in, right? It ends up just being a byproduct. It ends up naturally being
Yeah.
created based on, the frameworks that you're using, based on your, the reporting structure
Yeah.
that you're interested in, the metrics you create, et cetera. If you link them all during the implementation, it just immediately starts feeding data. when
Right.
you execute things in the operations. I think that's the ideal approach. Worry about the accounting integration.
Yeah.
You can start with a manual process where somebody gets to check the transactions that are
Yeah.
going into the accounting system, but then that can easily be converted into an automation
Right. Right.
once the customer is confident. And I'll tell you, an integration between governance and risk and compliance and metrics and all that kind of stuff, then financial transactions that are created in Trinity and basically importing them into your accounting system.
Right. Right.
Because that particular integration is predictable.
Yeah.
It's according to the local accounting and taxation laws,
Yeah.
and it's simple. I
Yeah.
would say it's actually quite simple. Transactions, financial transactions are fairly simple things. They have to be balanced. You've got account codes. Pluses and minuses have to equal zero. It's
Yeah.
all fairly simple.
Yeah.
But the GRC to operations integration, it can be very, very complex if
And
you're
that's
trying to deal with it one
right.
metric at a time. Yeah.
That's when they replace accounting systems or try to make a fit into what the operations, and then you have this ledger with a subset of clarification of what that means and where it's coming from, and actually they when they try to reverse that to the operation, what it means in terms of cost. We spoke last week about cost analysis in terms of
Mhm.
overheads, and when the overheads is something that belongs to the operation, not really to the accounting systems.
Well, I would say it's actually probably the reverse. Your overheads are the bills that you're paying to exist as a business, right? Your electricity, other utilities, the rent on the building,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. They go into a bucket that we would call overheads, and that's best done wherever you're managing your bill payments,
Right.
right?
Right.
Your especially with a number of utilities companies and that kind of stuff. That's best handled in your accounting side. From that, you're able to determine a per unit overhead levy that you can put into
Yeah.
your operations system, especially in manufacturing. And it doesn't recreate a financial transaction. It gives you the cost analysis. All your
Yeah.
expenses would be managed in Trinity. And those expense transactions would be ported over, but
Yeah.
the overheads would give you, analytical strength,
Right.
but it wouldn't double post the overheads, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Right.
It's also important to have an additional layer of complexity in addition to the general ledger. So, for instance, you've got maybe, I don't know, 100 different account codes in your GL, and your business is growing and starting to get more complex.
Yeah.
One of my favorite little features in Trinity is that we have cost elements and profit elements, which allow you to have multiple versions of expense
Right.
mapped to a single expense code, right? Those are cost elements. And then profit elements can be multiple elements of profit linked to a single, profit accounting code
Yeah.
or revenue accounting code.
All right.
That keeps your general ledger simple. That keeps your financial reporting simple, and your taxation simple, but it allows you to operate in as complex a way as you wish from an analysis and a reporting
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, sorry, I deviated a bit from the topic today, but actually, in terms of wrapping up, what will be the final advice in terms of GRC as a native integration between operations and governance, risk, and compliance?
I would say it's mission critical.
Right.
If if top floor decisions can't be immediately tracked or executed through shop
Mm.
floor operational execution, if there's too much of a time lag between the two, if the feedback mechanism, we've talked about this a number of times,
Right.
is that feedback loop is how old is the data reporting back to you the effectiveness of your strategies,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And the risks that you're trying to mitigate and the actions that you've determined. Leadership will go through a lot of activity to
Mm.
try to make the right decisions.
Yeah.
However, if they're depending on data that is anywhere from 1 to 6 months old, they're
Yeah.
not making the right decisions. it's a matter of luck at that point whether or not their decisions are going to be correct.
Yeah.
Typically, they would end up having to ask everybody to refresh all of their data collection before confirming a decision, and that's just a big time waster.
Yeah.
So that GRC to operations loop of basically setting direction,
Yeah.
executing, and then getting a feedback mechanism. I think that that's mission critical, especially for smaller and medium-sized enterprises
Right.
where it's hyper competitive and they're
Right.
trying to get the most bang for their buck.
Yeah.
Sending some transactions over to an accounting system, they just need to be technically correct.
Yeah.
They're not difficult. And that's determined by your reporting cycles, right? The time frame required, et cetera. As long as the system that you're using, a system like Trinity, is capable of generating fully balanced journal entries,
Yeah.
then you're going to be all right, because
Right.
getting them into your accounting system is very simple. So I would recommend, my last recommendation is don't silo GRC.
Right.
Choose a product where it's fully integrated,
Perfect.
natively integrated.
Yeah. Excellent. So thank you very much again, Richard. Fantastic clarifications. What is a native integration in GRC and operations? And we'll see you again on next Tuesday or our next technical Tuesday.
Yeah, next Technical Tuesday, we'll start getting into the operations layer. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very
Right.
much, Richard. Talk soon.
Thanks, Fran.
Okay,
Talk
bye-bye.
to you soon. Bye.